Early morning rooster calls echoed across the miniature doll village while crows rested on the edges of small mud house rooftops. A soft orange sunrise slowly spread across the narrow village paths, ponds, and green paddy fields. Thin smoke rose gently from tiny clay stoves as the quiet village slowly awakened. A miniature newspaper seller entered the village on a small bicycle with folded newspapers tied behind the seat. The bicycle wheels rolled over the uneven mud road while sleepy dogs rested beside doorways. One by one, newspapers were dropped carefully near bamboo gates and clay verandas. At the same time, the milkman walked through the village carrying two hanging metal milk containers balanced on a bamboo pole across his shoulders. The containers softly clinked with each slow step as he moved between the houses. Inside a tiny courtyard beside a clay house, the miniature doll wife stepped outside carrying a brass pot. Her red village sari moved lightly in the cool morning breeze while silver anklets made soft sounds against the damp ground. She tied the brown village cow beside a wooden feeding post and sat quietly on a low stool. Warm milk slowly filled the brass pot while the cow calmly chewed dry straw. Nearby goats wandered beside the bamboo fence, and sparrows pecked at scattered rice grains near the courtyard entrance. After placing the milk inside the kitchen, the doll wife swept the courtyard carefully using a thin broom made from dried coconut sticks. Fine dust moved softly across the ground while early sunlight touched the clay walls of the house. Near the hand pump, the miniature doll husband washed his face and folded a cotton cloth over his shoulder. He adjusted the small bamboo basket hanging from his bicycle handle and slowly rode toward the village market through the muddy path beside the fields. As the husband disappeared down the narrow road, the wife entered the tiny kitchen. The kitchen walls were darkened by years of wood smoke. Bundles of dried red chilies, onions, and garlic hung from bamboo poles overhead. Small clay pots and brass bowls were arranged neatly beside the mud stove. She picked up a woven basket and walked slowly toward the vegetable garden behind the house. Dewdrops still rested on coriander leaves and green chili plants. She carefully picked fresh tomatoes, onions, coriander, and green chilies one by one. Beside the nearby pond, ducks floated quietly through still water while dragonflies hovered above lotus leaves. The wife washed the vegetables carefully at the edge of the pond before returning home with the basket resting against her waist. Meanwhile, the husband reached the busy village fish market. Fishermen sat beneath cloth shades beside wooden tables covered with fresh river fish. Cats wandered near the stalls while buyers inspected the morning catch. The wet market floor reflected sunlight in small puddles of water. The husband stopped beside a prawn cellar. Large river prawns rested inside a shallow metal tray filled with crushed ice. The seller weighed the prawns carefully using an old hanging scale with heavy iron weights. After purchasing the prawns, the husband visited another small shop and bought mustard oil, turmeric, and a fresh coconut. The market remained lively as villagers purchased vegetables, rice, spices, and tea leaves. Bicycle bells rang softly while tea sellers poured steaming tea into tiny clay cups. Back at home, the doll wife washed rice carefully inside a clay pot until the cloudy water became clear. She left the rice soaking beside the stove while arranging cooking utensils nearby. By late morning, the husband slowly returned home carrying the bamboo basket filled with market items. Mud clung to the bicycle wheels from the wet road. He parked the bicycle beside the courtyard wall and handed the basket to his wife. The wife opened the basket and carefully lifted the fresh river prawns into a brass bowl. The smell of fresh prawns mixed with the earthy scent of vegetables and wet clay from the kitchen floor. Outside, the calm village morning slowly moved toward noon while cooking preparations quietly continued inside the miniature doll house. The miniature doll wife sat beside a flat stone slab near the kitchen doorway and began cleaning the river prawns carefully. She removed the shells slowly while keeping the tails attached. a brass bowl beside her filled with cleaned prawns washed in turmeric water. The soft sound of flowing water mixed with distant bird calls from the village trees. Outside the house, the miniature doll husband carried dry firewood pieces from a small storage shed beside the cow shelter. He stacked the wood neatly near the mud stove before walking toward the edge of the field to repair a damaged bamboo fence. Goats wandered slowly near the pond while chickens scratched the ground searching for grains. Inside the tiny kitchen, the doll wife pushed several dry wood pieces into the clay stove. She leaned forward and lit the fire carefully. Orange flames slowly rose beneath a black iron pan while thin smoke drifted upward through a small opening in the roof. The warm glow from the fire reflected softly against the dark clay walls. She poured mustard oil into the pan and waited quietly as the oil slowly heated. A few moments later, she placed the prawns gently into the hot oil one by one. Loud sizzling sounds immediately filled the small kitchen. Steam rose upward while the rich smell of mustard oil and fried prawns spread through the courtyard. After lightly frying the prawns, she removed them carefully into a brass plate resting beside the stove. Chopped onions were added into the same hot pan. The onions slowly softened and turned golden brown while she stirred them gently with a wooden spatula. Fresh ginger and garlic paste followed next. Thick steam rose heavily as the mixture cooked together over the wood fire. She crushed ripe tomatoes by hand and added them into the pan along with turmeric powder, red chili powder, cumin, and salt. The curry base slowly thickened while oil separated gently along the edges of the pan. The entire kitchen filled with the warm smell of cooked spices and roasted onions. Outside, village life continued naturally under the afternoon sunlight. A potter shaped wet clay beside his small workshop while women spread pap ads over woven mats to dry. Children walked home from school carrying small cloth bags, and a shepherd guided cows slowly along the dusty road. Back inside the kitchen, the doll wife cracked open the fresh coconut using a small iron tool. She grated the white coconut flesh into a brass bowl before placing it onto a flat grinding stone. Green chilies were added beside the coconut, and she slowly moved the grinding stone back and forth until the mixture became smooth and creamy. She poured water into the curry pan and carefully added the coconut paste. The gravy slowly turned thick and golden while soft bubbling sounds came from the simmering curry. Smoke from the clay stove drifted gently across the kitchen ceiling. The fried prawns were then placed back into the curry. She covered the pan with a round clay lid and reduced the fire by pulling some burning wood slightly away from the stove opening. Beside the curry, another clay pot was placed over the fire for cooking rice. Steam escaped softly from beneath the lid while the rice slowly cooked over the steady flame. The husband returned carrying large banana leaves from the backyard. He washed the leaves carefully beside the hand pump and left them under sunlight to dry. Afterward, he sat quietly in the courtyard repairing an old fishing net using thin rope while the afternoon breeze moved gently through the bamboo fence. Inside the kitchen, the doll wife sliced fresh eggplants into thin round pieces and placed them into another iron pan filled with hot oil. The slices crackled softly while turning golden brown. The smell of coconut prawn curry, steaming rice, and fried eggplant slowly spread across the miniature doll house as the calm afternoon continued through the peaceful village. The afternoon slowly became quieter across the miniature doll village. Most villagers had returned indoors after finishing their daily work. Only soft bird calls, distant bicycle bells, and the occasional sound of cowbells could be heard from nearby fields. Inside the tiny kitchen, the miniature doll wife carefully lifted the clay lid from the rice pot. Hot steam rose into the smoky kitchen air and slowly drifted toward the roof opening. She gently fluffed the cooked rice with a wooden spoon while the grains remained soft and separate. Beside the rice pot, the rich prawn curry continued simmering inside the black iron pan. Thick golden gravy coated the river prawns while small drops of mustard oil floated along the edges of the curry. The smell of coconut, spices, and fried prawns filled the kitchen warmly. Sunlight entered through the small kitchen window and reflected softly against the brass bowls hanging on the clay wall. Bundles of dried chilies and garlic moved slightly as the afternoon breeze passed through the room. The doll wife chopped fresh coriander leaves carefully on a small wooden board and sprinkled them over the curry. She then lifted the pan slightly away from the strong flame to keep the gravy thick and smooth. Outside in the courtyard, the miniature doll husband folded the repaired fishing net and placed it beside the bamboo fence. He washed his hands and face at the hand pump while cool water splashed onto the muddy ground below. Nearby chickens rested quietly beneath the shade of a banana tree, while goats lay near the wall chewing slowly. The wife carried 2 large banana leaves into the courtyard and wiped them carefully with a damp cloth. She spread the leaves side by side beneath the shaded roof edge of the clay house. A mound of steaming white rice was placed onto each banana leaf. Beside the rice, she served thick coconut prawn curry inside small brass bowls. Golden fried eggplant slices and fresh onion pieces were arranged neatly along the edge of the leaves. The husband sat cross-legged quietly beside the meal. A soft breeze moved through the courtyard, while sunlight filtered through the banana leaves overhead. The wife sat beside him after placing another spoonful of curry over the rice. Both miniature dolls ate slowly and peacefully without speaking. Steam rose gently from the hot rice while the sounds of birds echoed softly from distant trees. Occasionally a bicycle passed along the mud road outside the house, and children returning from school could be heard faintly across the village. The rich curry mixed with the warm rice while the smell of mustard oil and coconut remained in the air. The husband finished his meal slowly, while the wife added a little extra curry onto her rice before continuing quietly. After finishing lunch, the wife gathered the brass bowls and cooking utensils carefully into a basket. She carried them toward the hand pump beside the courtyard wall. Water splashed softly as she cleaned each utensil slowly using ash and coconut fiber. The husband folded the used banana leaves and carried them toward the cow shed to feed the animals. Nearby, the brown village cow rested quietly, while flies moved lazily through the warm afternoon air. Far across the village, fishermen prepared their nets beside the riverbank for evening fishing. Women lit clay stoves once again for preparing the evening meal while thin smoke slowly rose into the orange sky. The doll wife returned to the tiny kitchen and arranged the cleaned brass bowls neatly beside the mud stove. The remaining prawn curry rested inside the iron pan, while the warm smell of spices still lingered softly throughout the house. Near the doorway, the husband sat quietly watching the narrow village road as the evening breeze moved through the bamboo fences. Crows slowly returned to the rooftops, cows walked back toward their sheds, and the peaceful rhythm of miniature village life continued naturally around the small clay house.